When Jon Snow first arrived at Castle Black, he believed leadership came naturally to the strongest man. After all, he was the best swordsman amongst the recruits. He had trained under Sir Roderick Castle, while the others had grown up stealing to survive or working in quarries. His skill made him feel superior, and that arrogance isolated him from everyone around him. The castle's blacksmith Jon IV eventually forced Jon to confront an uncomfortable truth. His talent wasn't something that he earned alone, it was a privilege. The other boys had never been given the opportunities he had. Jon accepted that lesson in the previous chapter, but understanding empathy is one thing. Can he still hold on to it when the challenge becomes far more difficult? George Martin answers that question through one of the series' most unlikely characters, Samwell Tarly. On a surface level, Jon IV appears to be Sam's introduction, but beneath that, it's really about Jon's first real act of leadership, because for the first time he chooses to use his strength on behalf of someone else. The chapter opens with Jon teaching Daeron how to improve his swordsmanship, a subtle showing of Jon's development. Earlier in the novel, Jon's skill isolated him, now he's quietly passing it on. That lesson is then interrupted by the arrival of Samwell Tarly. Everything about Sam marks him as an outsider. He's enormously overweight, richly dressed, nervous beyond belief, and completely out of place amongst thieves, poachers, and criminals. Sir Alliser wastes no time dubbing him Sir Piggy, ensuring he becomes the target of the recruits' ridicule. Then comes the inevitable fight. The Holder is bigger, stronger, and more experienced. Sam never really stands a chance. Within moments, he's lying on the ground, blood running through his shattered helmet, begging for the beating to stop. But the fight doesn't end there. Sam has already yielded, yet Sir Alliser orders Holder to continue striking him anyway. This moment reveals the difference between authority and leadership. Thorn has absolute authority over the recruits. Nobody questions his orders because they fear him. Jon, however, does. Ignoring Thorn completely, he reminds Holder that there's no honor in beating someone who has already surrendered. It's worth remembering who is saying this. The Jon from the opening chapters measured people almost entirely by their ability. He mocked Gren for being slow, dismissed Pip as weak, and assumed his own skill made him naturally superior. Now confronted with someone even weaker than those boys, his instinct isn't contempt, it's protection. Thorn immediately recognizes what Jon has done. This isn't simply disobedience. Jon has challenged the way he runs the yard. So he turns the situation into a test. Jon can protect Sam if he wants to, but he'll have to fight 3 opponents to do it. At first, it looks like another opportunity for Jon to demonstrate his skill with a sword. Instead, Martin shifts the focus somewhere much more interesting. Before Jon can face them alone, Pip quietly steps beside him, then Gren joins him as well. Neither boy is ordered to help, neither has anything to gain, they simply choose to stand with Jon. This is a key moment because it shows us that people trust Jon's judgment. Martin quickly moves past Jon's victory because the fight itself isn't the point. What's changed isn't Jon's skill but what he chooses to use it for. And this is the first real indication that Jon has begun thinking like a leader. His influence is no longer built on ability alone, but on the example he's setting for those around him. Afterwards, Sam introduces himself properly. He's polite, awkward, and painfully self-conscious. When Gren asks why he didn't fight back, Sam gives an answer nobody expects. I fear I'm a coward. It's a remarkable admission. Throughout A Song of Ice and Fire, characters constantly perform bravery. Knights build reputations around it, lords expect it from their sons, even cowards usually hide behind excuses. Sam doesn't. He openly admits the thing he despises most about himself. Later that afternoon, while spreading gravel across the wall, Jon finds himself thinking about something Tyrion Lannister once told him. Most men would rather deny a hard truth than face it. Jon begins to realize that Sam's honesty requires a different kind of courage. A subtle but important moment for Jon. Jon IV taught him not to judge people by their identity. Sam is beginning to teach Jon not to judge them by their fear. If Sam's introduction changes the way Jon sees strength, their conversation later that evening changes the way he understands fear. Rather than joining Pip and the others after supper, Jon notices Sam sitting alone at the end of the bench. Once again, Martin doesn't directly tell us Jon has become a better person. He simply lets us watch him make a different decision. Instead of laughing with everyone else, Jon sits beside the one person nobody else wants to. Their conversation then takes them outside, where Jon quickly realizes that Sam's fear extends far beyond the training yard. He's terrified of the cold, frightened by the wall itself, and even suspicious that Jon has brought him outside to play another cruel joke on him. To Jon, it just seems impossible to understand, so he asks the obvious question: if you are truly so craven, why are you here? It's a reasonable question, but it reveals that Jon still has something left to learn. He assumes courage is simply a matter of choice. Sam's response proves otherwise. Rather than answering, he breaks down completely. For a moment, Jon doesn't know what to do. It's Ghost who quietly approaches and begins licking the tears from Sam's face, until almost unexpectedly, those tears become laughter. It's a lovely moment because Martin resists turning Jon into the perfect hero. He's grown enormously since arriving at Castle Black, but he's still learning. Compassion isn't always about finding the right words. Sometimes it's simply about being there. Once Sam has composed himself, he begins telling Jon about Hornhill. Sam loved music, books, and dancing. He hated hunting and couldn't bear the sight of blood. Everything around him conflicted with what his father expected from his heir. Lord Randall Tarly responded with cruelty. Masters at arms beat him, others starved him, one forced him to sleep in chainmail. Nothing worked. Instead of creating courage, each punishment only deepened Sam's fear. It's a fascinating contrast to Jon's own upbringing. Jon also grew up believing he was never enough. As Ned Stark's bastard, he constantly felt like an outsider in Winterfell. But despite that emotional isolation, he was still raised by men like Ned Stark and Sir Roderick, who valued honor, patience, and discipline. Sam had no equivalent. Where Jon's father figure encouraged quiet strength, Sam's believed fear could be beaten out of a child. The result speaks for itself. The most chilling moment comes when Randall forces Sam to choose between taking the black or being murdered in a hunting accident. It isn't a choice at all. Suddenly, Sam's presence at Castle Black now makes perfect sense. He didn't join because he lacked courage, he joined because it was the only way he could stay alive. That completely reframes Jon's earlier question. Sam isn't weak because he fears death. He survived years of psychological abuse from the person who should have protected him most. It's one of the chapter's most important lessons. People often carry burdens that aren't immediately visible. Until Jon understands Sam's past, he completely misunderstands his present. Earlier in the novel, Donal Noye challenged Jon's assumptions about privilege. Here, Sam challenges his assumptions about courage. Both lessons point towards the same conclusion. A leader has to understand people before he can lead them. That lesson is tested almost immediately. Returning to the common hall, Jon finds the recruits mocking Sam once again. This time, however, he doesn't simply defend him in the moment, he decides to solve the problem in general. Martin tells us that Jon persuades some of the boys, shames others, and threatens those who refuse to cooperate. It's a surprisingly understated piece of leadership. Jon doesn't command them because he outranks them, he convinces them because they respect him. Only Rast refuses. Rast is interesting because he represents everything Jon is trying to change. Like Sir Alliser, he mistakes cruelty for strength. Hurting someone weaker than himself makes him feel powerful. Jon realizes in this instance, reason alone won't change that. So later that night, he, Pip and Gren visit Rast's cell with Ghost. As Ghost bares his teeth against Rast's throat, Jon quietly reminds him, "We know where you sleep." Although this is cruel, Jon's intentions are good. He's going out of his way to protect Sam. The following days prove that Jon's plan has worked. When Sir Alistair orders the recruits to attack Sam, they deliberately hold back. Instead of humiliating him, they allow him to learn. And slowly, Sam begins changing. He joins them at supper. He joins their conversations. Eventually, he even laughs with them. Notice that Jon never teaches Sam how to become fearless directly. Instead, he creates an environment where fear is no longer exploited. That's what allows Sam to grow. It's the exact opposite of Randyll Tarly's approach. Randyll believed fear produced strength. Jon demonstrates that acceptance does. The chapter closes with Sam thanking Jon for everything he's done. Jon replies, "We're not friends, we're brothers." It's one of the simplest lines in a Game of Thrones, but it carries enormous weight. When Jon first arrived at Castle Black, he imagined the Night's Watch as an order of legendary warriors. Over the past 4 chapters, Martin has systematically dismantled that illusion. The Watch isn't defined by its castles or its swords, it's defined by the men who choose to stand together despite their differences. That's exactly what Jon creates here. Long before he's elected as Lord Commander of the Night's Watch, George gives us the first glimpse of the leader Jon Snow will become. And that is simply because he recognizes that the strongest man in the room has a responsibility to protect the weakest. And this is Jon Snow's first big step towards leadership.